slide that you see in front of you is essentially some of the work that we did at Next Generation Services, which was this 10x industry disruption organization that we talked about specifically for shared services. And as you can see, each of the blocks up there is essentially a 10x, which is a 10 times impact project that we ran. And we asked all kinds of, really intriguing questions like, in most companies, why should the travel expense process even exist, given the fact that, it's a data game and, data about where you travel and what you spend on is already there. And so if that's the case, why do we ask our employees to create travel expense reports and have the entire back office around expense receipt management and stuff like that? Or, can we do real-time supply chain planning, finally, from, suppliers to customers? And by the way, we actually ran, as we call them, experiments or pilots, and then scaled several of these ideas. So these weren't just questions; these were actually projects that were ran, that were run by this organization. And then I won't go through all of them, but as you can see, it actually spans the gamut from of work processes, from call centers to using AI for marketing and master data and so on and so forth. So, and on the next slide,
I must ask this question on this slide. Did you manage to kill the expense report? I think it's a dream of everyone who works at a corporation.
Actually, that one's a particularly exciting story. We actually proved that it was possible. We actually ran that for our shared services center in the UK. And this is one of the things that I will talk about. It's really important, where although you have a big idea, if the company is not ready to actually kill the project and then to move on to other projects. So this was one of those examples where we made it successfully, and because it was taking too long to actually change the process in the company, we put it on the back burner and said, we'll come back and do that later. And that particular approach of, you have to be a venture capitalist in the way you run these 10x disruptions. So you can't really say, I'm going to work on 5 projects and make all of them successful. As you know, VCs take a different approach. They say for every 10 companies that we fund, maybe 5 of them will be successful, and of the 5, only 1 of them will be a blockbuster, right? And that was the exact approach we took, which gets into some of the things I was talking about relative to skills. And that's one of the important things that I learned along the way, which is the skills that are necessary to drive digital disruption in today's world are actually not the same as the skills that you need in traditional organizations, including IT. Certainly, you do need technical mastery and stuff like that, but the more important things that you need is the ability to thrive in ambiguity, right? You have to be fueled by curiosity, and you have to be okay with things that change around you. You have to be much more action-oriented, not stay at the conceptual level for very long, but essentially build as a way to learn. And then, thanks to your question on travel expenses, this was a good example of fail fast and learn fast and move on, right? And this is what is fueling the demand for a different type of, not just talent within the company, but talent sourcing outside the company as well. And we'll talk a little more about that in a couple of slides. So on the next one. Yeah, please go ahead.
From my experience, the threats you're describing, this is like, the startup world I've been living in myself for the past year, and I can only tell how big of a shift it is to move from like a corporate structures where, things are kind of carved in stone and fairly stable, and the ways to do things are quite stable. In the startup world, the plans may change, overnight. Do you like how do you gauge that, like between the technical mastery and all of the soft skills and the personal characteristics that one needs to have? Like, can you draw a line, like how important is each one of them, or whether companies should focus more on the technical mastery first, or rather the soft skills? And the second question, how do you see that evolving over time?
So the first question around the balance of technical versus soft skills. There have been several studies done in the industry around the future of work, and I'm actually an advisor to MIT's study group on the future of work. And what they have found is that the mix of skills from, what in the IT world used to be much more focused on technology has changed. So today and in the future going forward, to be successful, you're going to need a mix of right brain and left brain capabilities. And honestly, if we kind of step back and reflect on that, that's not surprising, because the creative side is necessary when you're going to be leading transformation. I mean, the technical side is a given in today's world, right? Now, again, that mix will change and will vary rather a little bit based on the roles, right? So when you have somebody that's, purely in an operations role in the back office somewhere, you do need a higher concentration of, the more technical capability kind of stuff. However, having said that, even in those roles, what we have found through our studies is that you do need much more creativity, because many of the continuous improvement ideas do come from those operational roles, right? So that's one, mix. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have the disruptors where, quite frankly, you need much more, maybe even a majority of the skill, if that's even possible to measure, which is more creativity, and less, which is just hardcore technology, right? And to your second question on how that's changing over time, again, through some of the industry shaping work that's happening, it's projected that, in the next 10 years or so, in many of these technical skills, you're going to need a preponderance, a huge amount of design thinking, creativity, empathy, and other skills. And I think that's an important trend.